Once again, good afternoon. My name is Cenk. I am the chairperson, and I would like to remind you about the mobile phones, the surveys, once again the Twitter, and please ask for the microphone before asking any questions. That's the only way we can record it in the video. So it is my pleasure to introduce you with Professor Alan Weller. He has been very supportive of this organization since the beginning. So Professor Weller, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cenk. Can you hear me? Can you hear me in English? Can you hear me in Turkish? Anybody? Okay, I might not need these then. I can speak English, by the way. Okay, great to have you here. We've got 48 and a half minutes to cover this 50-minute session. So delighted to have you here. As Cenk said, thank you for that introduction, and I have been involved with integrated supply chain from the very beginning in terms of the London, Brussels events and the 3 events. This is the 3rd in Istanbul. How many people were here last year? Of you? Okay, not many. Okay, last year I spoke on integrating supply chain with business strategy. So leveraging supply chain for business strategic improvement. And I'm not going to talk about that this year because I have 2 burning objectives in life. One is to actually get supply chain on the board, driving the board agenda. Not in terms of looking at just the cost reduction of supply chain, because it's a very expensive area, but more particularly the concept that supply chain is a value-added process. It's a business process, not just a function. It's a business process that can add value to the business. And therefore it needs to be taken seriously in the boardroom. And I've done a lot of work in that area, and some of you, if you were here last year, will have heard me speak on that and the research that I've done in that area, practical research, engaging with the global leaders of supply chain community worldwide. And I'm continuing that research, and I'll talk about that at the end if you want to get engaged in that. But I have another second burning objective, which is to get businesses working together to improve the performance of logistics and supply chain operations around Europe, but really around the world. Europe, in terms of as it's defined by the European community, and also the add-ons, if you like Switzerland and some of the Scandinavian countries, and increasingly Turkey, although that's not formalized, only in part, as you know. But European supply chains are very advanced. They're most advanced in the world, and even the Americans will agree to that in terms of their functionality. But they are still extremely inefficient. And they're inefficient because every single player tries to optimize their own supply chain, which is commendable, but it's missing a much bigger opportunity. And the objective of this session is to talk about what is called horizontal collaboration. ELUPEG is a non-for-profit organization which I am chairman of. And in ELUPEG we've been working for 15 years now, leading the way in terms of getting businesses together to work collaboratively on improving supply chain in their own business, improving supply chain performance in Europe, and also creating a sustainable agenda for supply chain promotion. So that's the agenda. I have a large presentation here which I don't intend to go through in full. This session will be videoed and available, but more particularly the presentation both in English and in Turkish will be made available to all delegates later on in PDF format. But if you want this presentation in English in PowerPoint format, where you can unashamedly steal slides, copy slides, use them, but don't abuse them, I will be delighted to let you have a PowerPoint version if you just leave your business card and put presentation on the back. I will guarantee that my secretary, my assistant, will get you that presentation, and you will not be hassled on anything else. I do not do mailing list selling for anything. I do not sell. I promote collaboration, and I promote excellence in supply chain. But if you want to write on the back of your business card presentation, you'll get the presentation from this session in PowerPoint format, and you can use it. The only thing I ask you is to use it responsibly, and if you can recognize the source, I would be delighted. So copying somebody is the highest form of admiration. So I recommend that you take it away or get it in email if you want it, and then use it, because there's some powerful messages in here. Not my messages. I'm speaking on behalf of the people I've worked with over many years in terms of the messages that are coming through. So I'll stand to this side probably some of the time, and I might stand that side other of the time. The camera is swinging around to follow me. If you want to ask any questions at any time, stop me. There's a microphone which Jenga's got at the front here. Give your name and company, and then ask the question. If I'm going too slowly and you start snoring, I will wake you up and speed up. If I go too fast, then ask a question. But I've got a large presentation. I don't intend to go through all the slides by any means. I think there are 1,462 PowerPoint slides. Well, maybe not quite that many, but a lot. So I'm going to skim through some slides. Don't worry about that. I'm going to focus on the key points, and you will have this presentation in PDF format made available to you by Integrated Supply Chain, but also in a way that if you want it from me in PowerPoint format, as I say. So you'll have plenty of time to look at this presentation, because this is the beginning of a journey. If you haven't looked at this area in your business before, this is the beginning of a journey, not the end. And you will follow it up, and you will need to refer, I would suggest, to some of the elements in this as you move forward with this agenda in your business. So it's about not the theory, it's about the reality. There are a million books written on supply chain collaboration. There is very little published in terms of the reality. I am putting a book together. I'm putting two books together, which I'll mention at the end. One is on integrating supply chain with business strategy. Kogan Page, it'll be published next year. I'm still looking for case studies on successful integration of supply chain with business strategy, or unsuccessful integration of supply chain with business strategy. Because we learn from our mistakes. People say to me, you're very experienced. I define experience as the sum of your previous mistakes. I am very, very experienced, yeah? Because I've made lots of mistakes, so we can learn from each other's mistakes. The second book is a book on horizontal collaboration, where again I'm looking for practical case studies of how it is embraced in practice. I will give you a lot of examples in here, but I know there are some, and I'll refer to one example in Turkey in here, so it is happening around the world. But let's move on with this presentation. We started a couple minutes late. I want to leave some question time at the end, so I will target to finish a little bit early. But if at any time you want a question, please don't hesitate. The pointer is not working. It is working. So I have a number of different jobs. You'll see in the program I'm down as visiting professor, Cranfield School of Management, visiting professor in international supply chain management, which I am. And at Cranfield, I set up the Cranfield Centre in 1979. I set up the world's first master's program in logistics. At that time, it is now the leading program in the world. So Cranfield and supply chain are, I'm sure you're synonymous with excellence. Cranfield's been ranked by SCM World in a survey last year as #1 in supply chain as a business school outside the USA, #5 in the world. But that's not to say it's the only centre of excellence. There are many now centres of excellence across Europe, and as well as, of course, in the States and in other parts of the world. And I teach at some of those as a visiting professor. So Cranfield is on my CV. I also work for a consultancy, FSO Consulting. It was Solving FSO. And I was a partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers for 14 years and with them for 28 years. But I retired as a partner in PwC, having set up the logistics and run the supply chain practice worldwide for PwC. But I was old enough to retire. In fact, I had to retire supposed to retire at 55. I retired at 57. But I'm still a young man, as you see. So I'm still doing a lot of consultancy work, and all my consultancy is through FSO Consulting. I was international president of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. One thing I would recommend to each of you is to make sure you belong to a membership organisation where you can concentrate on your personal development. The fact that you're here at this programme means you want to develop yourself. And development never stops. I learn something every day. I learn things here today. I'll learn things from your questions. It's a process which all of us need to continue from birth to the grave. Yeah, and so please network and join in. The CILT, the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, 32 countries worldwide present. So I was international president. There's also SIPS, a very respectable organisation. As you see from here, I'm also on the Global Professional Research Committee of APICS Supply Chain Council, which is another membership, a corporate membership organisation. So, you know, your company may be part of these organisations too. So do leverage them. And if you're not involved, get involved. I set up an initiative called Leaders in Supply Chain, which I chaired for many years. I'm now honorary president. What I'm going to talk about today is Eliopeg, specifically, and the work that Eliopeg's been doing. I set up Eliopeg in 2001, 15 years ago, 2002, because the research that I'd done at that time, practical research, showed that Europe was very inefficient in terms of transportation, very efficient in terms of the quality of added value solutions, and I'll go through that in a moment, but very inefficient in terms of the use of assets, trucks in particular, and I'll come back to that in a moment. So Eliopeg, E-L-U-P-E-G, is an all-inclusive organisation. It's non-for-profit. I'm unpaid chairman. All the directors are unpaid. And the other directors of Eliopeg are people like Oliver Philippe, who's the European Supply Chain Director of Panasonic, Steve Harley, who was Global Supply Chain Director of Ford. He's a director and president. And the other directors are leaders in their own field across different sectors. And we're all unpaid. We all have other jobs to do, but we do this because we believe in it. There's also a very good, I'm involved in quite a bit of charity work because I've got so much spare time. it's inevitable. So TransAid is a very good charity. And I spoke in Istanbul many years ago on TransAid when I spoke at the Global CEO Forum in Istanbul. It must have been 10, 12 years ago. So if you want information about any of these, and apart from the top one, they're all non-for-profit organisation. In FSO Consulting, we try and make a profit, but sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. But if you want any information on any of these, as I say, just write on the back of your business card, Eliopeg, or write TransAid, or write APICS Supply Chain Council. And my secretary, again, will just send you information on what you want. So, you know, please feel free to use this to enhance your networking and your knowledge base, because my objective here is to get everybody in Europe talking to each other. And I can't succeed on my own. I can network, and I can network networks, but you, I think, need to play a part in that as well. So that's the positions. The agenda is quite a simple agenda, but each element could take at least a day to discuss, and we haven't got a day on each element. We've only got 42.5 minutes left on the whole agenda. So I'm going to skim through this agenda, but it's a logical agenda. It talks about the business pressures that we're under in all parts of the world and how supply chain is to respond to that. It talks about why we need to collaborate, the business case both for the world, which is all about saving the planet. But saving the planet isn't about hugging trees anymore. It's about going out and doing things for your business, to improve your business, to improve the performance of supply chains, and at the same time, make it sustainable. Unilever is a classic example of a company. I've worked with Unilever for over 20 years. I was the key account partner for Unilever when I was a partner in PricewaterhouseCoopers PwC. And I've worked with Unilever all over the world. Unilever, with their new CEO, Paul Poll, set out a One Unilever strategy, which is to double the size of the business and halve the economic impact. So double the sustainability and double the size of the business. And they do this by doing things like collaboration. So, for example, they've set up a control tower in Poland to actually collaborate internally and then externally to bring together all their European flows. I spent 3 years, many years ago, working with the executive of Unilever, trying to actually increase the collaboration between the different Unilever companies around Europe. There were 450 logistics service companies, all of them controlled at local level, and it was a complete mess. Very, very inefficient. And that situation in Unilever was reflected by every other country, every other business across Europe. Unilever have set out this strategy 4 years ago, double the size of the business and halve the the sustainability impact of what they're doing. Reduce carbon emissions, but improve the business. That is the agenda of Eliopeg. That is the agenda, it should be, of every business. Let me ask you a question. In terms of horizontal collaboration, in other words, getting businesses to work together internally between different elements of the business and with other business externally to improve vehicle fill by collapsing loads together by putting in common legs of your supply chain. That's called horizontal collaboration. How many people are well aware of horizontal collaboration? I won't ask you a difficult follow-up question, but I want to know how many people are aware of horizontal collaboration in this form. Please put up your hand. Not many, like one. Yeah? By the end of this session, you will certainly be aware, and you will hopefully see the opportunity for your business. There's only one business in the world that I've met so far where horizontal collaboration is a personal objective of the supply chain director, and that is Kimberly-Clark, where Peter Surtees, who was European supply chain director at Kimberly-Clark, is a director of Elupeg. And some of the earlier work we did in Elupeg, which I'll mention later on, was was Kimberly-Clark and Unilever in Benelux, working together to have a common supply chain. So by the end of this session, that one hand that went up will be 38 hands, yeah, going up. And out of those 38 hands, I would expect some of you to go back to the office and talk with your colleagues and start to initiate some initiatives to actually take this agenda forward in your own business. You can use Elupeg. Elupeg is non-for-profit. It's an open organisation. We have meetings around different parts of Europe 4 times a year. The next meeting is in Germany in September, hosted by Panasonic. Anybody can come along because you will meet people, you will start to understand how people work together, and you can join the party if you want to. It's a non-threatening, supportive organisation. So I would hope that you'll ask for information on Elupeg on the back of your business card, and you will get information on Elupeg sent to you, an invitation to future meetings. I've been talking with people about having a meeting in Istanbul, but it won't be this year, or we've got the meeting scheduled for the next 18 months, but it'd be nice to do that in the future. So collaboration action through Elupeg and other projects that we're doing in Elupeg, which I'll talk about. There's a lot of challenges. It's not easy. But it is now being embraced in a very serious way. And it's the only way forward. Unilever don't have a plan B. They've got plan A, which is to double size the business and halve the impact on the planet. They don't have a plan B. There is no plan B because we have to save the planet. But we have to save the planet in a sustainable way, which is about the way ahead. I am, late this afternoon, the last session in Hall 1, I'm running roundtables on this very topic. If you want to get involved in a roundtable discussion on the challenges, how to find a collaboration partner, what the problems are, and then please join the roundtable later on. How many people have signed up for the roundtable? Put your hand up if you have. 1, 2. Yeah, by the end of this session, it should be at least half of you, I would hope. I know you've got to sacrifice. They're all great sessions. You can't take everything. Okay, so that's the agenda. Business pressures today. So there's a slide here which, if you've seen me present before, I always use this slide, and I don't apologise for it, because this is where we sit in the world. I'm not going to go through these. You can see what they are yourselves. Tremendous pressures ranging from international competition, globalisation, hyper-competition, which is generated by globalisation, which opens your market to other people, but opens other people's market to you. So Turkey's being poised to take advantage of European markets, continental European markets, but that means that Turkey's marketplace is open to other people. And that's not just for Europe, it's for the rest of the world, the Far East, North Africa and so forth. But so hyper-competition is a result of that, because companies have to be good at everything. So hyper-competition is defined by having to be good at everything. Not just the product functionality and the price, but getting it to people. It's a supply chain agenda. So if you look at Coca-Cola, what is their mission in life? There certainly is a brand. It's the most valuable brand in the world. They don't actually make things, They don't actually do very much in terms of logistics and packaging. They outsource that. But brand management is what they're about, the most valued brand in the world. But their mission is to get Coca-Cola within an arm's length of everybody on the planet. That sounds a bit like supply chain to me. So without supply chain, they can't achieve that. So all of these pressures create a highly competitive environment where we have to be good at everything. And if we're talking about physical things, supply chain is the solution that will add value. It's necessary, so it'll absorb a lot of cost, but more importantly than that, go beyond that, see it as a value-added process. Because if we have a supply chain proposition that's world-class, we can use that to find new ways to market and new propositions. If you look at omni-channel retailing, you know, the ability of us, the customers, to hop from the store to the internet to the catalogue and order and pay any way we want, and then get the goods any way we want, home delivery, whatever it might be, and return it. That requires excellence in supply chain. So supply chain is necessary, not only necessary to deliver that proposition, but if we have a good supply chain, we can go into other new propositions in existing markets or new markets, because we can e-tail outside our own domain. So it's very powerful. And supply chain, there it is at the bottom, serving localised customers' needs through longer, more complex supply chains. That's the requirement, and we've been very good at that, but we've created a situation which is, in many ways, unsustainable. So that's the global picture on supply chain. Just to look at the players, we have start off with the consumer. We're all consumers. We want a lot of things here. That we want. You know, we want everything. We want it now. We want omni-channel, multi-channel, omni-channel, interactive, more demanding. We have manufacturers and brand owners who provide the goods, getting to us through retailers and distributors and e-tailers. Logistics companies are necessary to provide the channels to market and the physical operations. And we have systems to support the business processes, and we have technology that enables us to put systems. Notice the way I said that. We start with the customer, we then go to the response of the manufacturers and the brand owners through the retailers, with the help of the logistics service companies, using systems to support the business processes and using technology to support the systems. Technology is critically important. It is necessary but not sufficient. We went through a stage in the world 20 years ago when people thought that technology was the answer. We had the e-businesses. Well, you know, it is not the answer. It is a necessary but not sufficient. 80% of issues from other research that I've done is about people. The barriers of people and the enablers of people. The technology is important, but it's only 20% of the issues. So people, people, people. So when we talk about the digital world and digitized supply chain, and we talk about disruptive technology, yes, all of that is happening. But without the people to handle it, we're going to get nowhere. We get lost. So people, people, people. But our response to this is the value chain response. I've used the word value chain because we should be adding value at every part in the supply chain. I won't go through that. That's some of my thinking in terms of next generation supply chains. You can read that at your leisure. But this is a very important concept, that people tend to think of supply chain as a function. In other words, somebody in the organisation is responsible for transport, warehousing, inventory, customer service. It may be responsible for procurement, it may not be. May be responsible for manufacturing, may be responsible for other things. That is a functional responsibility, which is very important, which needs to be at board level. But take supply chain as a different dimension and see it as a process. The process of managing the end-to-end players in a supply chain to actually create a seamless offering to the customer. Because if you look at your own supply chain, you map your supply chain, you'll be amazed, if you haven't already done it, do it please, how many other players are involved. You know, from raw material providers, primary manufacturers, secondary manufacturers, retailers, distributors, e-tailers, logistics service companies, etc., etc. Supported by everybody is involved in this stuff. So it's actually critical to see supply chain as a process that gets that extended supply chain working to the benefit of your organisation. Because the chain is as strong as its weakest link. If your supply chain in its totality does not work, it will not work for you. You will not succeed as a business. So see supply chain not just as a function, but as a process that needs to be taken up in the boardroom for merger and acquisition activity. I was phoned up last year. A managing director said, Alan, we've just acquired a company. I want you to see if there are any synergies in supply chain. So I sort of put the phone away from my ear and swore slightly. Then went back and said, you've already bought the business and you want to know what the synergies are. Just to be clear, you didn't do this before you bought the business. No, why not? Oh, you didn't? Okay, yes, I'm happy to help. Supply chain is strategic. We should be examining these synergies before we go into M&A activity. And if we look at the opportunity of leveraging our relationships with suppliers or with customers or outside people, we've got to see supply chain as a process that the board embraces through the leadership of supply chain, which is you guys and girls. So it's an integrator between business functions internally, but it's also an integrator between external players in the supply chain. So see supply chain as a process as well. And as I said, I've worked for the APIC Supply Chain Council, and the Supply Chain Council produced this concept, which is called M4SC, Management for Supply Chain, which is all about linking supply chain strategy, resources, processes, network strategy. So a lot of people focus on, reconfiguring the network or putting new processes in or resources. These have a logical link, but the critical one that tends to be being ignored is the link between supply chain strategy and business strategy. So business strategy should drive supply chain strategy. It's got to be linked up. And indeed, there's a feedback loop here, which is very important. And the research that I'll mention at the end, if you want to participate in, is about leveraging supply chain for business strategic benefit. And this is where I'm looking for case histories of work that's been done, and I'm carrying out another intensive global survey. If you want to participate in that, write research on the back of your business card, and you'll get a link which enables you to participate in the research, and you'll get all the results of that, plus a white paper at the end. But this is a very important concept which was driven forward by the Supply Chain Council, which has now been taken over by APIX, rightly or wrongly. And that's quite a powerful way of seeing the whole of the strategic positioning of supply chain, not only resources and network, but within the business strategy. And that's quite an important concept. So I do recommend that you look at that. Business case for collaboration. There was some Gartner research in the year 2005 which showed that more than 50% of functionality of supply chain was outside the enterprise. That means if you map your supply chain outside your organization and where your organization sits in it, and you look at the supply chain functionality, in other words, transport, warehousing, customer service, all the storage, handling, processing points, more than 50% of that overall by the year 2005 was external. Now think about that. It means that supply chain is not an internal agenda. It means supply chain is an external agenda. It is an internal agenda, but it's also, even more importantly, an external agenda. And so we've moved from having that shape of organisation. I used to work for British Steel Corporation. I did a real job. I used to make things. I worked in production management and management services. And it was British Steel Corporation. It was vertically integrated. If you look at the steel organisation, Tata Steel took over it and then is now selling it, unfortunately. But it's a global network of which the Tata Steel does little bits and then deals with competitors in terms of buying and selling raw materials and semi-finished products. So that network organisation has replaced the vertically integrated supply chain of the past. And this is where, if you look at the functionality of supply chain, 50% is outside the enterprise. That means supply chain is a critical external agenda. So don't see it as an internal agenda. Now, if I asked you the question, does your organisation see it as an external agenda as well? Let me ask the question. How many people here have work in an organisation that sees supply chain as external, a critical external agenda as well as an internal agenda? Please put your hand up. It's got to change. The advanced companies like Unilever I've talked about are doing this. And this is what we're trying to develop with Elupay. This is just a development of added value solutions in European supply chain logistics. And this has led the world. Here we go from storage and haulage, so transport and storage, developing these concepts of just-in-time, consolidation, logistics management, transport networks. We're now moving into multi-user solutions, and as we go into the 2015 to the end of this decade, we're talking about collaborative solutions, which is where we need to go to next, which is what Elupay and horizontal collaboration is all about. And look at the forces that have created this fragmented flows around Europe. And these are all excellent in terms of the response to the requirement from the customer and the marketplace. Home shopping, home delivery, product line preparation, fragmented flows, global sourcing, distant sourcing, multi-channel developments, fragmented flows, seasonal produce, remote sourcing, focused manufacturing, distant production, far sourcing or near sourcing. And I'm not going to go through them all. You can see it. The agenda that we've been following, quite rightly, has been to follow the customer and to follow the manufacturers and the retailers and the brand owners to globalise our supply chain and perform, has created all these fragmentation forces. which is actually fragmenting our supply chain. So this is the research I did between 2000, well, the first stage was for the anniversary of the Single European Market, which should have happened on the 1st of January 1983, and 10 years later I did this research to see what it looked like. And I found this situation here, 85 billion kilometres. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Go back. 85 billion kilometres of trucks running along with nothing in them. Teardrop trailers, low resistance, streamlined cabs, low emission engines, but there's nothing in them. They shouldn't be on the road. And if they're on the road, they should be full. So this was my research, 85 billion kilometres of empty running, utilisation less than 20%. 40% of them were full, and of those, and 40% were actually running on the road. So then moving to smaller trucks dilutes the effectiveness, and congestion dilutes the effectiveness. But this was my research, which woke people up, and that's why I formed Elupeg. And then the World Economic Forum did some research which was respected far more than mine, understandably. But interestingly, the same results. 24% of vehicles are running empty. Average loading of the rest is 57%. That's overall efficiency of less than 50%. That is totally and utterly unacceptable. It's costing each one of you in your businesses a huge amount of money, and it's totally destroying the planet. So, you know, and the interesting thing is flow imbalances only explain part of that. How long can this continue? And then on top of that, there was a European logistics strategy from Brussels, and which is saying how Europe should respond to that in terms of the actions that need to be taken. We've got to cut carbon emissions. We've got to actually reduce, well, a number of other things, dependence on imported oil, we've done that. But improve efficiency and effectiveness and sustainability simultaneously. It's not either improve the business or go for a sustainable solution. We've got to do both at the same time. Bundle and reduce freight flows, scale up for intermodal. So people say, move everything to rail. You can't move everything to rail. You know, the railheads don't go into many of the retailers, or certainly don't go to your home. So we need road. But if we can collaborate, we can move large flows from road to rail, road to sea. And air has its place as well, but collaboration is essential to be able to get the critical mass to actually move these volumes around. Drastic innovation is needed. So this is what we've been doing in Elupeg. So there it is, effectiveness, sustainability and efficiency. That was the report on from Brussels for Europe. And just to recap on collaboration, there's vertical collaboration, which is about vertically on the supply chain between suppliers, manufacturers, retailers, customers, vertically. Then there's horizontal collaboration, which is collaboration between different businesses, as I talked about, Kimberly-Clark, taking toilet tissues and kitchen rolls to the marketplace. Unilever Fabergé taking deodorants and perfume to the market. So different businesses, but with a collaboration, they can actually have a common, part of their supply chain can be common. That was put in place many years ago as an example of what can be done. So economies of scope, multi-user solutions. Collaboration in action, and I'm not going to go through these just to say it's not new. There's lots of examples here. Just look at the names of the companies, Pillsbury, Seneca. This is in Turkey. So an FMCG manufacturer in Turkey, looking at its routes to market. It was losing money because of high routes to market costs. So find somebody to collaborate with to get to the marketplace. So if you don't have an effective end last mile solution, it's still called last mile, even though it's a kilometre. I know this, but it's still called last mile, even in the metric countries. But find somebody to work with, you know, because you have the same objectives. You're trying to get stuff. And the growth, I read a report yesterday which said in the UK there are an estimated, let me just get the figure right, 20 million white vans, of which half are doing home delivery because of e-shopping. Now, I live in a little remote village in a cul-de-sac, and if I'm working at home in my office, I can see white vans coming up and down to the 10 houses, and I can count between 5 and 10 white vans every morning. each one of them is delivering that much. This is not sustainable. This is crazy. So look for a partner, and this is the way it's going to happen. So ELUPEG, European Logistics Users, Providers, Enablers. Users are manufacturers and retailers and people who actually take ownership of the product. How many are you? Just put up your hand if you think you're a user. A manufacturer, a retailer, or a distributor. You take title of the product. Hands up if you are. Come on. Manufacturers, retailers, distributors. Yeah, so about a quarter, or with hands up, you know. Providers, which is the logistics service providers, people who actually move stuff for other people. Hands up if you move stuff for other people. Logistics service company? No? Yes? Some? And if you're the rest, you're an enabler. You're still a stakeholder. You might be a consultant or a software house, but you're helping other people do it. Hands up if you think you're an enabler. And I'm an enabler. Yeah, so there's a spread of these, but ELUPEG is there to attract everybody. And I'm not going through these, you can read this, but ELUPEG basically does this is the project. It's pioneered the way through work and practical work in Russian market entry in Ireland and other parts of Europe. And I won't go through these, but you can see the names in each sector of companies working together to actually improve performance. And this is the Lever Fabergé Kimberly Clark example I talked about earlier on. And I'm not going to go through these, you'll have them to look at. And that's Ireland, which we won't go through. If you look at the membership, it's inclusive of users, providers and enablers with around about 700 members across Europe, all participating. If you want to join ELUPEG, it doesn't cost anything. It's open to anybody. Just come along, write on the back of your business card, ELUPEG, and I'll send you information. And there are some of the companies that are these are corporate sponsors of ELUPEG. So we've got 800 members, but those are some of the companies. And if you look at some of the projects we're doing, again, if you want information on ELUPEG, any of these projects, you can have a look. Vision 2020, let me just go back. Tailgate, which is Transport and Integrated Logistics Gateway. It's a practical piece. It's going to market. We've just raised 156 million euros to take that to market and go to IPO. Its initial public offering. CO3 project was collaboration, carbon dioxide and co-modality, a Brussels project. Next Trust project is another major project, a 13 million euro project we're doing work with for Brussels with practical pilots. And again, there's a lot about this in this presentation if you want information about this. And we've got things like the route to collaboration. You know, how do we go about doing this? You know, find a partner, find the value, and there's a logical way which we can actually show you is proven. And a lot of other people. So there are quite a lot of challenges which I'm going to go through in the workshop this afternoon. You know, antitrust issues. You know, am I breaking the law by working with a competitor? Well, no, not if you do it the right way. And we can avoid that, but learn from other people. And it's about behaviours, and it's about maybe working with the enemy. Some of this is stuff for you to read out afterwards, some of the barriers. But the way ahead, briefly then, we've got this a Vision 2020 project, which is trying to turn Europe into a set of streamlined flows and hubs rather than just this mishmash of fragmented flows. It's a very ambitious project, but it's starting to gain traction. TG Matrix, which is Tailgate, which I've talked about, which is a live real-time matching system for loads and spaces on vehicles and moving stuff from road to rail and so forth. And I'm not going to go through any of these in detail. They're there if you want more information. CO3 I've talked about, and that's the CO3 consortium. You can see some of the companies that are involved in that. So some very major names. And I won't go through the detail of that, of course. But if you look at Next Trust, which is this current project we're doing, and if you want to learn more about this, come to an ELUPEG meeting. The next one, as I said, is in Germany, hosted by Panasonic. But developing a lot of pilots involving these companies. So Panasonic are hosting the next meeting, but you'll see Unilever's in there, nonetheless. But these aren't closed. We're looking for additional companies to participate in the pilots. And I was talking to somebody outside. Some of these pilots might include Turkey, because we're looking for areas in the wider concept of Europe, and we're looking for other companies to participate. And one of the pilots, which I was talking to somebody outside over coffee this morning, is a pilot of frozen and chill distribution, where typically it's a very expensive operation. There's a frequent delivery requirement. There isn't necessarily the volume to be able to deliver enough frequently to justify the trips. But work with other people. In the Irish project, we had a bread manufacturer and a chicken manufacturer who were only 1 kilometre from each other, who could use the same vehicles, because for the chicken you put the chill on, and for the bread you just turn the chill off, and you can use the same vehicle on return loads. So a whole pile of options there, and that's the next trust project. But the way ahead is about European supply chains. What's the conclusion? Advanced in the world, asset utilisation is a problem. We've got to find a way of securing the future. And collaboration has been slow to take off. It is not easy. We need to actually find ways of doing this together. And Eliopeg has been pioneering the way. These research projects that Brussels is now funding aren't just research for the sake of research. When I say a research project, these are practical pilots which turn into real collaboration opportunities. So, have a look at this. And some messages for the CEO, which you can take to your CEO. There's the future meetings set in Eliopeg. I would expect that in 2017 we might have one in Turkey, but come along to one in Germany, come along in the UK. There's the website, www.eliopeg.com. But that's the end of my presentation. Just to say, if you want more information on any of this, right at the back of your business card, presentation, I just say 2 things here. I'm launching this new stage of research on supply chain strategy in the boardroom. If you want to participate in that next phase of research, the link is going out in September. And it's purely voluntary. If you participate, you'll get a copy of the report and the white paper. And it's not about horizontal collaboration per se, it's about supply chain in the boardroom. And also, I'm looking for case studies. And then there's the book on that and the book on horizontal collaboration. So do feel free to contact me. So we've got time, I think about 2 or 3 minutes for questions. We started late. We've finished actually on time, so we've probably got more than 2 or 3 minutes for questions if we could be fair. But let's see how we go. So who wants to say anything? Yeah, please. Can you have the microphone? Can you give your name and company so we know where you're coming from?
Yes, sure, Alan. My name is Tolga Demirözü. I am IS and Supply Chain Head of BASF Turkey.
Yep. BASF.
Yeah,
okay.
the
Yep.
German chemical company.
Yep.
Just before I was in a team of the global consultants, and I have 2 points that was for me eye-catching in your presentation. One is regarding about function, supply chain as a function and to be at the board level. We had also lots of internal discussions as well, and we would like to move supply chain from, in quotations, functions into a solutions provider, which would be much more adding value to the business and to be much more on the strategical level. So we are in a move of transforming from function into a service unit as a business solution provider internally. So this is just a side remark. And the second one is regarding about collaboration and external agenda. We had also recognized this, and we had also a journey of having this supply chain as an external agenda, and started with some or key customers at the global level, some collaborative planning, starting with the collaborative planning to the other functions as well. And now it has been also assigned to be clearly as a target is to push this horizontal collaboration. But here there's a third dimension we would like to bring into picture as well, as an industry is also the part of the logistics provider. In majority of the cases, these big companies are using the logistics provider, and the logistics provider now, we are going to push the logistics provider not to only optimize their own structures, load consolidations, but look from a further view with this horizontal collaboration and try to optimize the whole chain and even industry. I don't know if you also have some, let's say, examples where a logistics provider is involved into in the equation for this facilitating this horizontal collaboration?
Yeah. Okay, a
Thanks.
lot of very important points in that question. Let me start with the last point, can I? And then I'll move on to the first point. The logistics service companies initially were very reluctant to embark on this route, primarily because logistics companies typically, if we look at that mapping of Europe, have dedicated contracts which typically are quite profitable. They may be inefficient in the total, but they can make money on them because it's their business and they're doing it in a dedicated way. Collaboration suddenly opens up their business to collaborative solutions, and they were fearful of losing their business, so they tried to lock their business. Not all of them, but that was the general reaction, and we saw that. The situation has now changed because logistics service companies now realise that this is inevitable. And if you look at some of the examples I gave, the Lever Fabergé Kimberly-Clark one is being run by Kuehne + Nagel. And Kuehne + Nagel are actively doing this type of collaboration in Benelux, in France, in the UK. DHL are embarking upon collaborative solutions as a marketing promotion. And so to answer your question, logistics service companies were reluctant initially, and now they are being proactive, some of them. They still prefer a dedicated, profitable solution, but they are recognising the inevitability. And if you look at the projects that I talked about, they're getting involved. I'm delighted you're here to talk about BASF because I've done a lot of work. Your global supply chain director, Robert Blackburn, he's a very good friend of mine because when he went to BASF, which must have been about 9-10 years ago, and this is in the public domain, I spoke at a conference in Brussels, and Robert was on the platform, and as I walked into the back late, because I often walk in late, he said, and thanks to people like Alan Waller, and I was just walking up the conference just to sit down, we've moved from originally supply chain reported to procurement. You know this, I don't know how long you've been there. He said now procurement reports to supply chain. So in terms of the functional representation, internal, it's been transformed by his position. He got himself on the executive board, so supply chain is represented at the executive board of BASF. And also the concept of supply chain as a process. I facilitated a meeting in Germany, which was live, broadcast live to other meetings in other parts of the BASF world, so to the Far East and North America. I don't know, that was about 6 years ago. I don't know if you were with BASF at the time. You may have remembered that then. So I did some facilitation and some talking, and we got people to break out and do. And we talked about supply chain as a process. Now, BASF is very interesting because the chemical sector is regarded as relatively immature in supply chain. But Robert Blackburn, because of the leadership, the strong leadership of Robert Blackburn as supply chain director globally, and the way he's repositioned himself in the boardroom, it demonstrates what can be done to bring supply chain up in terms of effectiveness. So, and we didn't rehearse this beforehand, did we? You didn't. I didn't plant you in the audience, but I'm delighted you're here. I'd like to have a chat afterwards. But BASF is a great. I gave Unilever as an example. BASF. There are outstanding examples, but most 99% of businesses are not thinking this way. We're running out of time. Any last burning question? I've got 0 minutes left, I'm told. 0 minutes to me means we've got time for any last question or point or comment. Let me ask the same question again. How many people are coming to my workshop later this afternoon, round table? Still, oh, none now, it was 2 before. No, I know, actually, we've got 4 sessions in each room. You can't make them all. But if you do want, if you want the output of the round table and you can't make it, write on the back of your business card, round table, and I will send you the output of the round table. It will be videoed and go up on the community internet. But I am here to actually get you engaged in this agenda. So anything I can do to help you, and it's not to help me, I will take the effort to use my PA to actually make sure you get the information you want to enable this network. But do please write on the back of your business card anything you want, and you will not be hassled, you will not be put on some targeted mailing list, I promise you. I'll stand here and say that's never happened, and it will not happen, I promise you. But do that before you go. I'll be around over tea time as well. But more importantly, go away and go and think outside the box and think proactively about supply chain as an external function. strategic for the business. Think about collaboration. How efficient is your network? Who can you work with? That's the end of my story. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. We are really very lucky to have you. And I think we will need a couple of more weeks to learn from your experience. Unfortunately, time is not enough. Araya giriyoruz. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. 20 dakikaydı, herhalde 15 dakika oldu.